night here. Backbenders Auckland special. Do join us, by the way, every Wednesday night at the Tauranga Waiwai Backbenders, the Backbender Tavern at 6 o'clock. But this is the Auckland special tonight. Now, Labour leader Jacinda Ardern claims that climate change is this generation's nuclear-free moment. Hands up. Who agrees with that in their horns? Hands up. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Judith Collins.
Yeah.
Do you agree with Jacinda?
No, I don't actually. I actually think it's really more important is that that children have a decent life and that they have a safe home and they have education and that they don't live in poverty. I actually think getting rid of child poverty is more important than anything for kids.
But hang on. This is a visionary statement. It's for the future. It's about our children because our kids can't live underwater.
But you know what? I care more about our kids being in poverty, that there are kids in poverty, than anything else.
All right, round the panel. What did you make of what Judith Collins said? Kelvin Davis.
Oh, I don't make anything of what Judith said. You know, you've got to think of those kids in Kiribati who...
She's right though about poverty, isn't she? It's a now issue. It's a now issue.
Actually, in terms of poverty, there's actually another level underneath poverty now. There's people that are absolutely living beneath poverty, and there we have to address that issue. It's not just people who are doing it hard.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I was talking to Tom Harris from the West Auckland Community Law Centre, and he says he's dealing with people who are now so down and so out that basically they have no respect for themselves.
Back to climate change. Do you support what Jacinda...
Back to climate change. Absolutely, I support what Jacinda said. And she mentioned her father saying, look, he doesn't know much about the science of climate change, but what about the Kiribati that's about a foot off sea level, and that whole culture, that whole nation is looking at oblivion.
Right. Shane Taurima, the Maori Party, do you support and endorse what Jacinda Ardern said, that climate change is this generation's nuclear-free moment?
What I can tell you, Wallace, is, you know, I've spent quite a bit of time with hundreds of whānau across Tamaki Makaurau over the last few months, and climate change is not an issue that's been raised by them. That's not to say it's not a key issue, because it absolutely is. What it does mean is that families out there are so focused on making ends meet.
Is that why your policies are tinkering around climate change? They're just tinkering, aren't they?
No. Are you asking me for our policy?
Well, I'm looking at policies right here.
No, well, I can tell you our policy. Wallace, I'm here and I can tell you what our policy is. It's actually about reducing emissions. It's planting more trees and investing more into energy efficiency. That's what our policy is.
All right. Do you agree and endorse what Jacinda Ardern said, Julianne?
It is the greatest threat to our civilization, and we have to take action on it now. And we cannot solve climate change without dealing with the same economic issues that are causing child poverty in New Zealand. The concentration of wealth is part of the problem with climate change. It's the problem with poverty. And the solutions to both are the same.
The solutions to both are the same. We'll come back to the panel soon. Let's go to Charlotte.
I've found a 12-year-old in the audience. The children of the future. Is climate change important to you?
Of course. It's my future, for God's sake. How can we care about child poverty when those people will grow up to have to wear gas masks on the street and have barely anywhere to live?
Yeah, Kelvin, 12 years old.
13.
Oh, 13 years old.
Oh, God.
The woman behind me, do you care about climate change?
Yeah, of course I do. I want to breathe just like everybody else.
Yeah, good call. Fair enough. What about you? Do you believe in climate change?
Yeah.
Do you support a particular party and what they sort of envision?
Actually, I don't really support parliamentary parties so much. I support this fire here.
Right.
Standing up for state housing while it's being sold off.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Nice. Thanks for coming. Wallace?
All right, Paul. Might try and get back to you later on to talk about that. But I want to ask Kelvin Davis about a bit more about climate change, because we're hearing a lot. I mean, it's a big statement. It's bold. It's visionary. But not a lot about the policy. So, for example, is the emissions trading scheme going to continue?
Yeah, and we need to bring those people who are doing the most polluting into it.
And so when is agriculture going to come into it?
Yeah, we're going to ease them into it. They definitely need to
come in.
How long?
What's the time frame?
As soon as possible. But look, I've heard people say we only produce 0.2% of the world's pollution and all that sort of stuff. But I keep saying, look, we produce 100% of New Zealand's pollution, and that we need to stop dumping crap in our rivers, our lakes, into landfills, into our oceans, into the atmosphere. We've got to actually address that.
Let me ask you, do you think, Julianne, do you think the emissions trading scheme is a bit too complex? We could do better with something like a carbon tax. Everyone here can understand it a bit more. The ETS is quite complicated.
The ETS hasn't worked. It hasn't put a price on carbon.
It hasn't worked?
It has not reduced carbon pollution. Carbon pollution has been increasing for the last few decades, and it's forecast to keep increasing under the national government's current policy settings.
So
40% by 2050. It's the exact opposite of
Well,
what we're supposed to do.
Actually, well, that's not really the full story because carbon intensity has gone down. So the GDP has increased. And actually, the carbon intensity has gone down.
You know what?
And
I gotta
every
say
year,
something.
farmers are dropping their carbon emissions by 1%. So
Judith, I
that's
hate to
great.
tell you this, but physics and the atmosphere doesn't care about carbon intensity. It cares about overall pollution, and that's what we need to reduce.
Well,
Judith,
I'm not suggesting that we should say that there's a limit on the number of people in the world, and that's one of the issues. So I think we do need to be able to work with science, which is really what Julianne's saying is there's only so many people in the world, and we don't want any more. I don't want to say that.
You could put a limit on the cows. So people like Mike Joyce, for example, a creditable scientist, saying perhaps there are too many cows in Aotearoa. Would you agree with him?
No, there's a lot of science going on right now, actually looking at reducing those emissions. That's where the solution is. It's in science, not feeding people.
If we don't have public policy, there won't be innovation. We have to put a limit on the amount of pollution.
Around the panel, you've been going around the regions, both of you. Are there, basically, at the end of the day, are there too many cows in New Zealand?
Well, no, we need farming.
Yeah, I know that. I know, but there are too many cows.
No, I don't know about that. I've got nothing against farming, so but we've just got to make sure that that the intensification, you've got to make sure that there's enough.
Okay, Shane.
It's not something that the voters that I'm talking to in Tamaki Makaurau are even worried about.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that actually we
Māori
do
are
need
worried
to make
about
them aware
environmental
because it's our
issues.
most vulnerable families and communities that suffer when we have these big weather events, storms, flooding and cyclones. It's them. It's those most vulnerable families and communities that really suffer. And so we need to make them aware,
But
Wallace.
can I say,
Kelvin.
Māori are really concerned about environmental issues. We're the nation's kaitiaki. So to say that it's not on people's radar, that's. I mean, I agree with Shane that housing and all that sort of stuff is an issue, but environmental issues are very big to Māori.
Every New Zealander cares about the environment. Every New Zealander does.
absolutely.
But the fact is that it's about balance, and you've got to actually, if we wanted to have a completely pristine environment, we could just all go live somewhere else.
So that's a
and
pipe
that's not
dream.
going to work. But what we do need to do is we need to be able to make it as pristine as possible and to have balance and to have wealth coming. And there are no poor countries with great environmental outcomes.
I want to jump over to the ACT candidate. Is a pristine environment in Aotearoa a pipe dream?
Beth, what do you think?
No.
I think the question is, what can we do about reducing emissions? And that question you had earlier about transport is where we've got to go with this. We need to move our transport system into the 21st century. We need to reduce emissions by reducing the number of vehicles on the road. Driverless technology is coming. App GPS technology is here now. Let's use it to reduce the number of vehicles on our roads, encourage more ride sharing and more use of public transport. That will have a huge impact on emissions.
Thank you, Beth.
That sounds like the Green Party.
Yeah. Unfortunately, their policies aren't going to work, but
All right.
that's okay. Hey, it's transport, it's housing, it's agriculture and
Basically,
sustainable
Green
land
Party
use, and it's the responsibility of government to protect and empower people. It's the responsibility of government to make it easier for households and for farmers to earn a living without polluting our climate.
We have to move on. Backbenchers, hashtag backbenchers with an ES. What are your thoughts on climate change? Is it a big issue for you? Next up, is Auckland the best city in New Zealand or not?
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.